here, but there's not a story that I've more desperately wanted to talk to you about since this Post story just blew this unbelievable fact out into public view. And I wonder your thoughts on all of it.
I am disturbed by this, I think, as everybody is. I was taking a step back from this, Nicole. I don't understand why we're going to war with Venezuela. And I'm not sure the administration has even bothered to try to come up with anything even internally coherent in terms of explaining why Trump has proclaimed that we are at war with Venezuela. My sense is that they wanted to use the Alien Enemies Act to illegally deport people, arrest and deport people from this country that actually weren't subject to deportation. They decided the Alien Enemies Act was a way to do that. They then realized the Alien Enemies Act required a war, so then they declared a war. Then they needed a reason for the war, so then they reverse engineered some sort of reason for the war. Ostensibly right now, the reason for the war is to stop drug trafficking into the United States. Today, the man convicted of the largest volume of drug trafficking in the history of the United States was just freed from prison by Donald Trump, the former president of Honduras. So clearly, if that's the area of focus, that isn't the justification for this war. So what are we doing there in the first place? Why are we blowing out of the water and killing people in boats with outboard motors, some of which aren't even pointed towards the United States, let alone verified to have drugs on them, let alone even if they were coming to the United States and they had the capacity to reach the United States and they were filled with drugs, why isn't it possible to just interdict them the way that we do with the Coast Guard, where you go and take the drugs and then put those people on trial and investigate and then follow the drugs to their source of origin and then take care of it there? Like, none of this makes any sense. It feels like they bumbled themselves into a profoundly incoherent and illegal situation in which they decided the one true benefit they were getting out of all of it is that they were getting video game style visuals to play on Fox News and put on TikTok. And they liked that. So now they have put this admiral, the commander of Southern Command, every senior officer in that command, and all of the servicemen and women who serve there in the position of potentially being held liable for murder or war crimes until the statute of limitations on those matters runs. And I don't even know what it would be. And by backing and bumbling and symbolically rambling themselves into this mess, I'm less worried about the fate of the bad guys who have gotten us here than I am about the good people who've been put in the way of this mess. And from Admiral Bradley on down. And it's a catastrophe. I think Pete Hegseth, it's impossible to imagine that he survives this as Secretary of Defense. I think he must resign, and I think Republicans will ask for that ultimately once they investigate this. But this is a disaster for this generation of people serving in the United States military. And that is a tragedy more than a farce.
I think about the warnings from the generals, and I think about how desperate I was in the walk-up to the 2024 election for the people who Carol Leonnig and Phil Rucker have this incredible scene from inside the tank at the Pentagon, where he's just ripping all of the generals, the most accomplished combat veteran generals who've risen to the ranks, who have the respect of the men and women under them, who, have lost. I mean, people who have been through more in their service than Trump has in 10 of his lives. And he's attacking them and criticizing them and belittling them. And I remember being so desperate for those generals to talk to the country about what it would mean for the military, arguably the most opaque agency, even more than the CIA, definitely more than DOJ, where judges have contact and friction with the things that happen at DOJ. And I played some of General Kelly's, kind of 11th hour interview where he talks about what Trump wanted to do with the military. And he says this thing that people didn't focus on. He says, everything he wanted to do, I would go to the White House counsel. Now, sounds like a normal routine thing to do, but it suggests that there was constantly a need to tell Donald Trump that which was legal and illegal that he wanted to do with the military. Yeah. And when you have, and Hegseth's answer today was, quote, we're not going to just arrest people anymore. Well, arresting drug traffickers is what you do. The Coast Guard goes out there and they seize the drugs and they arrest them. And as you said, they go and find them at the source. I mean, if this is what's public facing, what is sort of the mountain of questions about what's happened to the military in these 12 months?
I mean, Trump wants to use the military for everything, right? You're also not supposed to use the military for running drunk driving checkpoints in Washington, D.C. You're not supposed to use United States Marines for protecting a federal building in Los Angeles from normal levels of protest. I mean, all of these things that he wants to use the military for. I mean, I half believe that the reason he thinks he can get rid of FEMA is because he's heard that the National Guard did some disaster response once. So can't we just use the military as emergency response? Like, can't the military take care of hurricanes? I mean, an authoritarian leader wants unified command over everybody who has a gun. He wants them all answerable to him, and he wants to be able to use them without restraint. And he wants to be able to use them against his own people, right? So once you're starting to think like Donald Trump does about what power really means to him, when he talks about how there can't be illegal orders by virtue of the fact that he gives an order, that means they have to do it, it gives you a real insight into what he thinks the military is for. And he wants to use them domestically, and he wants to use them for everything. And he doesn't see the value of any other form of governance. So once the U.S. military is seen as a tool like that of a leader like him, all eyes have to shift to the internal ethos and discipline of the U.S. military. Will you allow yourselves to be used this way? I mean, that ultimately may be the distinction between us becoming a dictatorship and us remaining a republic, is whether or not there is internal discipline and ethics in the United States military that prevent them from being used the way that Trump wants to use them. And having them carry out illegal orders is a great way to break those ethics and to break that discipline.
What do you think burst this story into public view? Because to your point, since go, he sent them out to the streets of American cities, which is another thing the generals warned him about in the first term, stopped him from doing. Milley and Esper, it's been reported by multiple journalists in the Oval Office after the murder of George Floyd. This is the first strike, but this has now been going on for many months.
Yeah.
After this strike, they started returning survivors. I mean, what do you think? What do you think brought this story into public view?
I don't know. And I don't have any inside information on this. This is me speculating. But I think there was a really important NBC News report about what was happening inside Southern Command. We saw the shock resignation of the head of Southern Command. Mm-hmm. He was not supposed to be leaving office. And he left office without Hegseth and Trump attacking him. There was sort of mild praise, thank you for your service. And he's disappearing, and nobody knows why he's leaving his post. Then we get that NBC News reporting that the senior JAG, the senior legal officer at Southern Command, has been essentially removed from the chain because of expressing concerns about the illegality of these strikes. Then we get follow-up reporting about there being a secret classified memo that was prepared in the Office of Legal Counsel at the Justice Department saying, you guys won't get prosecuted for this stuff, okay? We can't exactly articulate a reason why, but that's why. Clearly, there is incredible friction inside the U.S. military, including at very senior ranks, among people who know that this is wrong and who are trying to stop it, who are resigning, who are being removed from their positions because they are trying to stop it. And once you've got that kind of internal friction, once you've got that kind of internal fight, you're going to have news. I'm not saying, again, I don't have any inside information about what the source of this information is. But when you're asking people to do something that wrong and they know it's wrong and they're pushing back and it's ending careers because of it, it's going to come out. It's going to come out. We're lucky that it's coming out now while it's happening and not just as a point of history. But it's going to come out. These guys can't run from this stuff.